Hello, everyone. This is my first time recording on Substack. This is super exciting. I'm really looking forward to sharing so much on this platform. My name is Lauren, and I have been in fitness for 25 years. And as you can see, I really love the hips and the glutes. The more I worked out my glutes and reorganized how the function in my pelvis operated, the less I had neck pain. And in 2017, I had 2 disc herniations at C6 and C7. And working the glutes and the hips has freed up the tension in my neck, reducing flares to almost being non existent unless there is something extremely stressful that I went through either emotionally or physically. But the glutes, they are the holy grail of our fitness, especially as women. So here we are on my Substack, and I am so excited to share with you a brand new story. We had a major astrological event that the last time that it happened was like 6,000 years ago. Neptune, a feminine planet, and Saturn, a masculine planet, were like this at 0 degrees Aries on February 20th of 2026. When I found out about this conjunction, I was in a panic for basically an entire year because I looked into different times Saturn had conjunctions. And since Saturn is a lot about rules and boundaries and authority, I was really freaked out about what kind of institution was going to come down on our freedoms. But after I kind of worked through and did more and more research and did more and more meditation and breath work and read Jungian psychology books, the more I found out that we're actually at this incredible new epoch, how do we say it? Epoch or epoch of time. We get to tell a new story. So what I wanted to share with you, this is a picture and a printout of my most recent whiteboard. Like, I need a whiteboard to get all of my thoughts out, and I have to be able to draw, make connections not in a linear way. And so I wrote this all out, and I was so excited because it really ties in together what I know in my expertise as a fitness person with dealing with pain, with dealing with psychosomatic injury, because it has to do with the unconscious. And the unconscious is our archetypal energy, our archetypal collective belief systems that, because we are individual people and we don't really have community anymore, we experience these archetypal energies, which can be sad and angry and fearful, as a singular experience within ourselves. And then we feel like crap. And the reason why I know this so well is because I have felt like crap for most of my life. And it is a continual process of unfolding. So I want to share with you a little bit about what we're going to be covering here in Body Energetix and how I'm going to be operating within my Substack account. First of all, I want you to know right away if this is for you or not for you. You know, I primarily work with women. I do work with men once in a while. Men can certainly listen and learn from what I'm going to be sharing with you because we all have an unconscious, we all have the collective archetypes, and we all have a body and a soul. And in fact, I'm going to be sharing with you how masculine and feminine energy actually show up opposite within our human experience. And so, for instance, we talk about the woman has inner masculine energy, and we need to calm that stuff down if it's a tyrant that is constantly keeping us on a diet hamster wheel. Hold, please, I have to itch my nose. Or if our inner masculine really doesn't have a backbone and we need to teach him how to stand up for us. And then the men have an inner feminine, and the inner feminine that has been cut off from men is really kind of the crux of the entropy that we are currently experiencing with the tail end of the patriarchy that is hanging on for dear life. And like I said in the very beginning, this is a new story. And so I'm not going to talk so much about the patriarchy. I'm going to talk a whole lot about how do we embody our soul? How do we start to experience our body as a human form for the soul to experience this type of life? Now, I covered that. If you're a dude, you can come here and listen, although I primarily teach women and work with women in my day job, which is a personal trainer. And then number two, the second type of person that this is going to be really helpful for is someone who has retrograde planets in their natal chart. So, as you know, well, you should know if you are listening to me, that our planets are really ways that we have like operating systems and ways to experience reality. And if you go back before pop astrology and TikTok astrology, when you hear from an OG astrologer, they're talking to us about how astrological events are actually telling time. And so there's a lot of times where we say, oh, Mars is in retrograde. Oh, Mercury's in retrograde. And we have all of these horror stories that go along with it. But actually, number one, retrogrades are a way for us to have a review. And number two, the planets aren't doing anything to us. We're working and living in tandem with them. They have their own energetic experience that filters into ours, and probably vice versa. So if you have retrograde planets in your natal chart, you have the psyche, you have the intelligence, you have the power and the energy of these planets turned inward. So that's a lot of energy. And if you've, been in personal development, you've been trying to improve yourself, you know that anger turned inward turns into depression. So if we have any type of really big energy turned inward and it doesn't have anywhere to go, and we don't have any tools to process it because it is in the unconscious in that natal chart, all of this energy really gets stuck in us. And for me, with my experience with having retrograde planets with my moon in the seventh house in Libra, and also a Jupiter retrograde in Scorpio in seventh house, there's a lot of feelings. There is a lot under the surface that is volatile and is sad and does experience really heightened of everything, really happy, joy, sad, anger, all of it. And so what I have experienced in my body is a lot of repressed emotion. But the ramifications of that repressed emotion is pain, is illness, is a psychosomatic injury in my neck. And when I got into the psychosomatics of injuries, it was like ding, 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 light bulb went off, because a neck injury, if you think about the two organs that are above and below the neck, it's the mind and the heart. So if I had a neck injury, what does that tell me at the time when I was learning this? It told me that there was something awry with my connection with my brain and my heart. And so what continued to happen is, on top of illness, on top of chronic pain, on top of the psychosomatic injury, I also did a lot of yo-yo dieting. I did a lot of the times where you try to go on a diet and then you binge, then you get bloated, but you're just constantly trying to get yourself to where when you check the box, and it's like, even when we check the box, we still don't feel satisfied, right? Because then another box appears. But the experience that happens with us when we have retrograde planets is that we're constantly looking for the outside to make us feel better physically if we're in pain, but then also the habits that we do with diet and exercise want to make us feel emotionally better, that somehow we are complete when we reach our goal. So number one, if you're a woman, you should be listening to this Substack account. Number two, if you have retrograde planets. And then number three, if you are part of the bridge generation, where you were born between, I think it was like 75 to 85 or 87 or something, where we remember the old world. We were around our parents, our grandparents, possibly even great grandparents, who either survived World War I and World War II, or were affected by those wars. When we're the bridge generation, we are sandwiched between the old world and the new world, which is technologically based. And if you remember that when we were in the tail end of middle school or high school, or maybe if you were born in the 70s, it's going to be more towards your college years, where we got introduced to the internet, we got introduced to MySpace, we got introduced to this idea that we were going to have technology at our fingertips that was going to help us be more connected within our communities. And clearly, you can see the opposite has happened. And so, the bridge generation, we have the cellular and the vibrational memory of the old world because of the people that we were around. And then we are helping kind of integrate in a certain way in the age of the technology because we experienced that also. We were at young ages when technology was introduced, even though we had the foundation of the old age. So if you're here, you're a woman, you have retrograde planets, and you are of the bridge generation, this is your spot. Because what I have observed in working with my clients also, being the bridge generation and having retrograde planets, we actually do exhibit these behaviors of perfectionism within our diet and our exercise that really deteriorates our health and our self-esteem. But then we also just come to the table with a low self-esteem and a low self-worth and kind of this just like scattered, I feel like it's a cloud of information that we're like, wait, should I talk about this? How do I put it into one sentence? I have like 5 thoughts at one time. Ask me a question, but how would you like me to answer it? What angle would you like me to take? Because that's how the retrograde planets feel. It feels like, if you're a bridge generation, you know this, it feels like a Rolodex is going off in your head. And then technology age, it feels like a cloud is around you. And you're like, what do I tap into? What do I click on? So that is for you. If you are a woman, if you have retrograde planets, if you are a bridge generation. Now let's talk about this new story. So February 20th of 2026, Saturn and Neptune conjuncted at 0 degrees Aries. Aries is the first sign of the zodiac. When 2 planets are together, their energies mix, they create something new. Saturn, boundaries, structure. Neptune, feminine, illusion, synchronicities, the cosmos. And so what we actually have an opportunity to do right now is bring our spiritual beliefs into our bodies. All of the outer planets that affect civilization, they're also called generational planets because they have a 6-year transit, an 8-year transit, a 20-year transit. And so big collectives of people born in a 6-year time frame, an 8-year time frame, a 20-year time frame, they have that same energy. So when we have collective, we have shared ideas, we have community, and we build structures. Like that's why we have gyms. That's why we have Pilates studios, because everybody's in the same vibe. So same thing for the outer planets. So in 2025, we had the outer planets kind of like dipping their toes into the new masculine energy of air and fire signs. This is like go. This is like major go energy. And there aren't planets in earth signs. Guess what? You're on Earth. You're the Earth consciousness. So what that means, to evolve consciousness on this planet that sustains life, that generates life, that is having an experience of life all herself, Mother Gaia, we are at a time where we get to evolve the consciousness. So what that means is whatever belief that you have in what life is, what your soul is, what spirit is, what God is, what goddess is, it's like we get to wipe a clean slate. This is an evolution. This is a shift in civilization. And how we do this with having all of the planets, so basically think like all the mindsets are in masculine energy and our physical body is in the earth energy, and we are one with the earth. Because if you looked at us under if you looked at our insides, we would have the same minerals and vitamins that we have in soil. But then if you looked at our ashes microscopically, you would see the universe. We are both. And so, how we do this new evolution is we expand outside of the previous interpretation of what God or goddess is. And now you may have been seeing a lot of women, and I was doing it too before I had this revelation last week and over the weekend. We keep talking about regenerating the feminine, regenerating the goddess. But here's the thing, I don't think it's that either. I think that if we actually follow evolution and the evolution of consciousness, if we go along with Carl Jung with depth psychology, then we actually don't need to delineate God or goddess, because the scriptures that weren't in the Bible, right? Okay, so the Bible was created over hundreds of thousands of years, well, maybe just hundreds of years, maybe thousands of years. It had several edits at different 100-year marks. And one of the things that did not make it in was scriptures that were found at the Dead Sea, right? The Dead Sea Scrolls. And those scriptures really put our life and our soul in our body, in our own hands, where we learned, and there was teachings of how you actually interpreted the soul experience, or the soul having the human experience. And there's a lot of references to God, goddess, Gaia, Sophia, and a lot of these ways that back then they would talk about it. And we got into categories of, well, Sophia is the wisdom. Sophia is the feminine energetic ideas that wanted to incarnate. And so she fell into material existence, and we call her Gaia. And Logos is a masculine energy, and that was the counterpart. And they were married in heaven. And then when Sophia decided to create on her own without the Logos, she incarnated as Earth. But then as she incarnated, these inorganic beings came off of her body. And then now we have a mess. All because Sophia decided to create without her man. And at first, I really loved that mythology. But then the more I thought about it, I was like, oh, this is still where, when the patriarchy was forming, still women were to blame, just like we have the story of Eve. Now, here's what I want to say about this whole regeneration process, is that we have beliefs in a male God with the three Abrahamic religions: Islam, Catholicism / Christianity, and Judaism. And then now, ironically enough, it's in my bloodlines that I am affiliated with each of those three religions, which obviously blew my mind the more I got into it and did my etymology with my last name, with the regions of where I lived, conversation with one of my uncles, with documentation that I have from another uncle. Like, it was just like, it took a couple of years to get through. Point being, we have an experience of time with the dawn of civilization where we really started to get away from the goddess belief, which was that the creator was a woman because life comes from a womb. And we got into the belief of that God is a creator of a male deity. And the male deity of the Judaic Christian religion is actually after a whole bunch of Greek mythology that was kind of like individuating from. It was kind of like it had some of the goddess religion in it, but then it started to give men a creative role. And then, as more evolutions of time with different planetary transits, then in all over the world, we have all different ways to look at this experience of God. But primarily, when we look at what happened in the Fertile Crescent and with the three Abrahamic religions that still rule the world today, those are the ones that we have to focus on to change a new belief. Because if you look at what is happening in the world, we are in the quote unquote end of times holy wars. But we're in the end of time of the old time, because we had the Saturn and the Neptune conjunction at 0 degrees Aries on February 20th of 2026. It hasn't even been a whole month in the new world. So what we have to do, I encourage you to go to YouTube and watch near-death experiences, because in the near-death experiences, there are religious people who talk about how they thought they were going to see Jesus, but they didn't. And then there was non-religious people who didn't know really what was happening, but then when they realized that they were on the other side, then Jesus appeared and they were like, wait a minute, I don't even believe in this guy. What is going on? But the ones that really strike me the most are the ones who talk about being in the void, that there was just this blackness that was warm and loving and like velvety in texture. And I thought, oh, that's the dark womb of the mother. That's what the goddess religions were based on. The goddess religions made their huts and their containers and said, this is just like before we incarnate, when we're in the womb. And there was a lot of association in the goddess religions that the womb and the tomb were the same, because they were the space between life with a body and life without a body. And when I listen to these near-death experiences, and some people talk about how immediately they see light, and light is always associated with masculine energy, with frequency and quantum physics, when we're kind of putting together the spirituality with quantum physics. And darkness, matter, material, particle, is always affiliated with feminine energy. And when I'm listening to these stories, especially the people who go to the void first, I'm like, wow, so this was a collective archetype that probably many people, thousands and thousands of years ago, before the dawn of civilization, before agriculture, before herding, that believed God was a woman, because maybe people did have a near-death experience and then come back and talk about it. I was in darkness. So the reason why I'm sharing this with you, and I know I'm kind of like going all over the place, but clearly we can see this is how it actually works. It's nonlinear. We get to write a new story that says it's not God and it's not goddess. It's both. There is an energy that is required that both is required. A frequency, a wave, a thought is required before you take action. This cup was a thought in somebody's brain before it became a thing. And part of my drawing that I did over the weekend was this circle, and it says God is everything. And then I have earth inside, God is everything. And I was trying to make sense of it. And then all of a sudden I was like, wait a minute, no. If God is everything, then there is no reason to say goddess or God. It's just source. It's just energy. It just is. There's a spiritual book that quotes Bible stuff. It was like, written in the 1900s. And he would talk about that it's called it. Like God is called it because it exists. It. This isn't it. This isn't it. Everything is an it. And if God is everything, then God is it. And so I really want you to expand what your concept is of what God is, because if we're in a spiritual war, that means that the warfare is actually in the belief system. And whatever it is that we believe is going to impact how we are in our body with our health, how we are in community, and how we respond to the fear, and how we create the new civilization. Now, obviously, if you're in an area where the bombs are going off, that's a different story. That's your very much lived experience. But the backbone of what is going on is the religious wars. They've all been leading up to this because, what is it? Spoiler alert, Catholicism, Judaism, they all used astrology. They still use astrology. There's astrological signs on the ceiling of the Vatican. And they said we weren't allowed to use it, right? They said it was evil. And so we really want to embrace everything that we have learned up until this point and really do what one of my mantras is. If I believe what I say, I believe then. So if you believe in astrology, which it's not like a belief system, it is like a fact system. You can track different stuff in time with what was going on astrologically and then predict. If you believe that your soul is having an experience in your body, if you believe what you say, you believe then. and that you know that conjunctions and that conjunctions create something new, and that 0 degrees Aries is the beginning of time, then you have to zoom out and put all of that stuff together so that you can move forward in this new time. We are the people who are creating the next civilization. So, with that big umbrella of what is actually going on here, I want to share with you how this is actually going to happen. I'm going to be sharing with you insights. I'm going to write things. I'm going to do little videos. And I'm going to be sharing with you a whole lot about how the masculine and the feminine energy has split with the belief in a male god, and how to release all of that repressed feminine energy that was suppressed in order for these 3 religions to exist. And the easiest way that you can always think about this, that we have to deal as women, men too, but primarily as women, the only way that we're going to get back in touch with our body, back in touch with our intuition, so that we can intuitively eat, so that we can intuitively exercise, is if we're not afraid of our intuition. Because part of the process, especially in the 1500s, the 1000 to the 1500s, there was 500 years of quote unquote witch hunts, which really means the murders of women and people who supported women who were considered witches. These were women who were herbalists, who were midwives, who were healers, who had the intuition. And so a lot of women are not in touch with our bodies. I was one of them, not in touch with the body, because we're actually afraid of our intuition, because having that intuition and expressing it inevitably meant death, meant torture. So what we have to do is we have to get into our bodies and unpack the masculine and the feminine energy. So I'm going to be sharing with you masculine and feminine energy in here. And I'm going to kind of give you the larger picture, which I spent 26 minutes up until now explaining to you what the big picture is. The big picture is it's a new time in civilization and we're alive for it. But how we do it is through my Body Energetix curriculum. And I'm giving it to you for free. It is 12 weeks, and I used to have people pay for it. But now what I decided to do, because I truly believe that everybody needs to know how to do this, is the curriculum is free on the school platform. But if you want coaching, you can sign up for coaching and do the group coaching calls, or you can work with me privately one-on-one. Here, I'm going to give you the overall picture of what life can be like if you're actually transmuting the energy of your retrograde planets, if you're actually tapping into your cellular memory of being a bridge generation person. And then the curriculum is how you actually do it in your life with your eating and your exercise habits. Because our food has a lot to do with our feminine energy, and our body has a lot to do with our masculine energy. Food, we can starve ourselves to thinness only to binge and bloat days later, right? Well, starving ourselves to thinness is a byproduct of these patriarchal religions, Christianity primarily, where we had to live up on an unconscious level to the Virgin Mary. And virgin did not mean without sex. The original meaning of the word virgin was self-sustaining, self-generating. And that's what everyone is. Everyone is a virgin, because everybody has a brain that can send a signal, create a thought, and everybody has a body to take the action, and everybody has a heart to emanate the vibration in which they want to experience their life. We are all virgins. But the patriarchy changed the name and made us either live up to, on an archetypal level, the Virgin Mary or the whore. And the problem with the whore is the whore is where we sabotage, where we go overboard, and then where we are so ashamed. And Pope Gregory, in I don't know how many hundreds of years after Mary was alive and nobody could vouch for her, he's the one who said she was a whore. But then the church recanted it in 1969, but the damage was already done. People still affiliate Mary Magdalene with being a whore. But you want to know why that was such a strategic landmark event? It's because when she survived Christ's death, she actually was carrying on his message. And her message was all of the copies of her message that were written in the time of her being alive. All of the books all over the world, the first like 6 pages, I think it was, were torn out, and then the rest were buried. So what was she actually saying that was so controversial? She was actually saying that you can connect within, that you have the power of God within you. And if you look at any of the scriptures that did not make it into the Bible, or translations before the Bible was kind of like finalized by the Roman government, you're going to find out that there was a whole lot more autonomy and a whole lot more reference to women in it. And when we understand that the religions were actually forms of government back then, we can actually see how it's showing up in the governments of the world today. And that's a depressing state to be in. And that's where I have been primarily for all of 2025. It was a pretty horrific year for me. But what happens is once we understand that we have an unconscious affiliation with feminine energy that says you have to be perfect and thin to be loved. And then if I eat this is the horror part, if I eat this, I'm full of shame and guilt. Those are unconscious, energetic, feminine mindsets that we have that really keep us out of our body, experiencing it as a wonderful vessel that it is. The masculine energy shows up in our body with our thoughts. And so if you've looked into Louise Hay with like you can heal your body or any other type of psychosomatic healing practices, we know that joints and body parts have metaphysical meanings. And so when we look at our body and we address the body parts that aren't functioning properly and the body parts that we don't like, we find out what our limiting beliefs are. And beliefs are masculine energy because beliefs are thoughts we perceive are true. So when you're in Body Energetix curriculum, we use your food, we use the mirror, and we use exercise and dieting for you to poke the bear, get these unconscious energies up to the surface where you can actually work on them because it's all unconscious. How are you going to work on something that's unconscious if you can't see it? We're going to give you a place to see it with your eating and your exercise. We also use your astrology. We use your North Node as automatic yeses and automatic no's to any of the decisions that you're going to be making because your North Node is what you, on a soul level, destined yourself to grow towards in this evolution of you being a human. So my evolution for this human experience is Cancer North Node. I'm an Aries rising, so it's the 4th house, it's family. And do you know, on my little whiteboard, I have hundreds of year cycles of where my grandmothers were. And I am piecing together Saturn conjunctions at the times my mothers were alive and the threat that they were under for purely being a woman. So when we look at the North Node, it tells us a whole lot about what we came to experience this lifetime. We use your Lilith to help you unpack your repressed feelings. And oftentimes the Lilith placement, well, all of it, like if you had some tough things that you experienced, if you had adverse early childhood experiences, if you've had any type of trauma, you better believe it, it's in your chart. So I had a divorced household, North Node Cancer, family life. Obviously, I'm going to have a container that's going to cause me to grow. My Lilith is in Sagittarius, 9th house, 9th house, 8th house. I think 9th. I can't even think of it right now. Sagittarius. This is about dogma, spiritual beliefs. Obviously, that's where my teaching as a woman and my intuition is going to come from. My Chiron, we use Chiron to access your limiting beliefs because Chiron is the wounded masculine. We use that to assess your beliefs about your body and your beliefs about everything. My Chiron is in Taurus 2nd house. It has to do with the body and finances. And here I am, a personal trainer. Here I am with a whole bunch of health issues. Here I am, an entrepreneur. So what we actually find out with using our astrology is that the things that were tough in our life are actually written in the stars by us on that soul level. And we can use the astrology to access the unconscious, to look at it in a different way so that we can look at the hardships, present or past, as a way for our soul to grow. We cannot grow without friction. You cannot grow muscle without making little micro tears. Instant manifestation, why'd you even incarnate? If you want results in 21 days, like, why'd you incarnate? Like, we're supposed to struggle through it to create something. Like, a caterpillar turns to mush and then it becomes a butterfly. And did you know that this little boy like won this like massive award because he proved that butterflies retain memory even after they turn to mush from being a caterpillar? I don't know how he proved it, but he did. Another thing I wanted to say was, oh, I was listening to a scientist and she was talking about how, I think it was mice, when they saw the color orange, they were also electrocuted. Well, guess what? Their grandchildren, when they saw the orange color, had a trauma response. And so we get to really see how the unconscious is stored in our body. Carl Jung would call it the psyche, the integration, or the whole thing of our ego, our shadow, our soul, and our person. That's the psyche, everything that has to do with us. And so the Body Energetix program is going to help you get into that nitty gritty. It's 12 weeks. I tell you how to do everything. There's a video for each week. There are homework assignments / habit integrations so that you can actually make sense of this stuff and make it a lived experience. And as you give your eating and your exercise the meaning of getting your soul comfortable in your body, especially as a woman, without having to be the perfect virgin, without having to feel guilty, whore, which like we just have to say like guilt. They give us perfection or shame and guilt. Those are our two options if we look to the patriarchal religion. And clearly, if you're in Islam, you could see what that's like. Point being, I got off track. Let's wrap this up. You have 12 weeks of curriculum. Oh, that's what it was. When you give your eating and your exercise this meaning to make your soul comfortable in your body, you end up sticking with your eating and your exercise. And what is the number one thing that gets you results? Consistency. So as you're doing all this energy work to integrate mind, body, and soul, you're going to get results. And that's why we say aligned and hot with Lauren. That's my Instagram handle. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you're excited. Head over to school.com/Body Energetix with an X so that you can get started on your integration today.